for my work presentation was, I said something about I wanted to present a colorful historical overview. Okay, this is pretty heavy. So when I looked at the history, and I knew I would cry, I realized that, I had no idea. I mean, she just pops up where I live. I had no idea that the healers in Siberia were executed for using her. It's like, I didn't know that. Here I am, gathering amanitas, and then when I really looked at the history, it was devastating to me, and I'm sure to them. And she is legal now in every state except Louisiana, and most countries she's legal. And so I'm hoping that we all can agree we want to keep her that way. We want to keep her liberated. So we don't want any emergency room episodes, and I'm not going to sensationalize her. I'm going to tell you what I've learned and am learning, but we want to keep her safe. I mean, we've seen what's happened to so many other medicines.
Keep moving, I can.
We have to fight for. So there's a ton of historical information. She appears everywhere from 50,000 years ago in Australian cave art. This book, if anybody is serious about even thinking about becoming, going into relationship with her, this is Kevin Feeney's Fly Agaric, a compendium of history, pharmacology, mythology, and exploration. He wrote this in 2020, and he is an anthropological, what is he? He's a lawyer and anthropological scholar, and he works with, some of you know his name, I'm sure, because he works with the Shakuna Institute, I believe, in helping to cases to provide access to some of the other medicines, peyote, ayahuasca. He's right on, and he has interviewed many, many people, and he's done surveys with hundreds of people that are microdosing with Amanita. So if you are at all interested, I would highly recommend getting his book, because we're only going to be able to cover a tiny bit in this hour, and I want to open it up so that other people can share some of their experiences as well. Go for this one. It's a kind of a pricey book, but it's definitely worth it. It's like a Bible for this medicine. So I'm gonna there's all the historical stuff. It's in here. It's online. I also put out a trustworthy resource page over there that you could take use your cell phone and take a photo of. Those are all resources that I have come up with from the internet and things that I've read that are really good, so that you don't have to go Amanita Muscaria and try to figure it out online. That stuff is great. And then I want to add to that Giorgio Sammarini, who is an archaeologist and done amazing work with mushroom iconography. So because we don't have a whole lot of time, I want to talk about some of the contemporary scholars that have been working with Amanita. And I'm going to tell you just a teeny bit of my history. About 40, maybe 45 years ago, I saw Amanita for the first time growing in a driveway in West Sonoma County. And because at that time we had an entheogenic plant and seed and product business, I was familiar with it, and I knew that it was in North America, Native people have taken the thin red skin, peel it back off the caps, dried it and smoked it, sometimes with tobacco. So I did smoke that, probably dried it on my wood stove, and I can even remember it was so special to me. I put it in a red glass heart-shaped bottle and stashed it away. But when I smoked it, and I just in probably a little, I had a jade pipe, and I felt like I had a dark cloud hovering over me for about 3 days, and it didn't resonate with me. So I put it aside and just watched the mushrooms year after year, season after season grow, and I just left them alone and appreciated their beauty, because they are stunning. And then about a little over a year ago, my brother-in-law sent me a link to an Amanita site, and it was about a woman called Amanita Dreamer. So does anybody know about Amanita Dreamer? Okay, right on. I figured a couple people would. And I looked at her site and whoa, she is pretty out there. And I'm pretty out there, so for me to say she's pretty out there. So I kind of put that aside for a little while too, except that then a male, very wise man, friend of mine, we were having a discussion and Amanita muscaria came up, and he told me about a Northern California woman doctor and her younger male friend that were doing a lot of work with Amanita, this particular Amanita, with addiction. Now, boing, 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 because my life has been riddled with addiction episodes with family members and community members. So I went back to Amanita Dreamer's site and I looked at her history. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. And this is the book that she just put out this year. It's called Dosing Amanita Muscaria and What to Expect. It's kind of a workbook. And I haven't really read the whole thing. I got it not that long ago. Okay, so Amanita Dreamer, she was a Hurricane Katrina survivor. And she was devastated, of course, after the hurricane. She lost everything. She had a son and a daughter. And she has considered herself autistic. And so she went into a very deep funk and became super depressed, pretty much unable to do anything. And so they put her on a very, very high dose of benzos.
Oh, Jesus.
And through that experience, she felt like she was losing her mind. And was a walking zombie. So she didn't know what she was going to do. She felt suicidal. Her daughter left, and she had to send her son away because she could no longer care for them. Okay, so here's Amanita Dreamer, and I don't know what her real name is, but she says she chose Dreamer for a really good reason. So here she is, and she sat in silence, and she contemplated her life, and she was thinking about taking her life. So she sat in the sun, and she sat in the rain, and she sat in the cold. She just sat. And she had tried to withdraw or go off the benzos, and it was devastating to go off the benzos. And she sat and sat and sat, and then she went for a walk in the woods. And when she walked in the woods, she found a specimen of Amanita muscaria, and she thought it was a gift from God. Was. Certainly was. And she has a science background, and she took that, she pulled the mushroom out and took it back with her, and then she researched, and what she found was that the Amanita affects the same neural pathways in the brain that the benzodiazepines do. And if I'm saying anything that isn't accurate, please call me on it, because I want to learn more. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm just this humble apprentice of hers. So light went off for her, of course, and she went, bingo, I'm on another track. So she gathered her strength, and she researched, and she began working with this species of Amanita to her benefit, and long story short, she healed herself. She got to get rid of the benzos and carry on in her life. So now she's all over the internet. She travels internationally and does ceremonies. But at the beginning, she did one YouTube video of her story, so we would know where she's coming from. And then she started doing other videos of talking about the constituents in the mushroom and why we might want to connect with them. And she went on, now she's got about 20 of them. And some of them deal with the conversion of the constituents, the ibotenic acid to muscimol, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. How to make microdosing tea and how to use that appropriately. And also, she does so much harm reduction talk. She doesn't want anybody to end up in the ER. She wants everybody to be able to heal themselves if that's the direction they want to go. And so she's super cautious, incredibly cautious. So I have not, and I've looked, I have not seen anybody have any negative comments about Amanita Dreamer. And she's lovely, she's irreverent, and she's a rock star, in my opinion. And she and Kevin, who I think is also a rock star and just incredible for the work that he has done to illuminate her and bring her forth and help us to understand her history, pharmacology, every aspect of her. He and she are starting to be on panels together. They honor each other, and in fact, he gave her permission to publicly correct him because he made some kind of statement about, maybe it was Soma, and she said, I really don't think that's right, and she told him why, and he went, you're absolutely right, and you have my permission to correct me. So these guys work in tandem, it's awesome. Then, if you can see the microdosing book in the middle, that is written by another female doctor. I believe she's a gynecologist, OBGYN. And she says she was born in eastern Siberia. And she did a Russian podcast and chat rooms about psychedelics. And does anybody know about Baba Masha? Her book just came out in 2022. I mean, all this stuff is just starting to resurge, and I believe that Amanita Muscaria has been given an assignment from the divine to come up again, resurge, and help us out. I know I need all the help I can get, and anyway. So Baba Masha, being a doctor, and doing these podcasts and these chat rooms about different psychedelics, and she studied with Terrence and Ellen Watts. She came to the States, I think she was here for 10 years, and learned a lot, and then went back and did these chat rooms and podcasts, and people were starting to tell her about their experiences with Amanita Muscaria. And the only knowledge she had was, oh, it's this poisonous mushroom that you want to stay clear of, right? And that's what I always learned. She's too toxic to tap. But then she had something going on with her back. She was in a lot of pain, and somebody suggested she use Amanita topically, and lo and behold, she was able to start going to the gym again and move, her mobility increased like she couldn't believe. So she was sold, and she has done the first international study. She did it with 3,000 people doing microdoses of Amanita tea. And I'm going to tell you how to make the tea. And there's a whole bunch of dry amanita.
Wow.
But I'm not sensationalizing her. I'm just helping you if you have any interest at all. So she did this study, and I'm going to read just a little blip that she said at the end of that book. I have it marked so it'll be easy to find. She says after reading, she says she's gotten thousands of responses, and in the back of the book are like 800 little blips of case histories of people that are microdosing and their experiences. And she says, and these are her words, just a second, I'm going to do it with my glasses. The positive qualities of Amanita muscaria microdose reception are obvious. Amanita muscaria has a long-term positive therapeutic potential with a number of nosological units. It is a promising painkiller and an effective sleep recovery resource. It provides a steady improvement in a person's mental state. Amanita muscaria alleviates symptoms of depression and existential agony. It initiates a rethinking of relations with the world, people, and even the user, as well as the destruction of complexes and conceptual stamps of perceptions of the world, and the ability to stay in balance and interact with others from this point of view. It activates the ability to see the colors of life and feel the value of one's own life and the significance of one's own existence. And this is a really important piece. The importance of Amanita muscaria in the treatment of narcotic and drug addictions exceeds all currently known remedies. And it's quite a statement coming from a doctor that has heard thousands of reports and is dealing with it all the time. And one more thing I want to say about Amanita Dreamer is, of all the people that I've read and listened to, I've listened to a lot of interviews, a lot of videos. Amanita Dreamer is she embraces it. It's part of who she is. She uses it all the time, and she walks the talk. Totally walks the talk. Okay, so I wanted to say something about James Fadiman, who you guys probably, most of you know who James Fadiman is, and he's considered the father of microdosing. And he wrote the foreword for Baba Masha's microdosing with Amanita muscaria. And something that really struck me in his book, The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, and I think he also wrote a microdosing book, but I could be wrong about that. He said something about, to the effect that we think we're so smart when we're creating this microdosing concept, but people all over the world, indigenous people, have been microdosing forever, for centuries. And what came to mind for me, because I love coca, is in the Andes, the people that use coca leaf for endurance, and they didn't pack their mouths, with the biggest wad they could pot. They didn't do that. They chewed coca, they made the quid, and they walked up the mountain. And then when they needed more, they supplemented with more, which is what microdosing is about. And I've heard people say, like we got the Silicon Valley tech guys that are microdosing regularly and talking about their creativity. And some people kind of refer to them as wusses, because you're microdosing, why don't you take a big hefty dose, But they're not wusses at all, in my opinion. They're doing the work in the way that they can do the work every day. And who knows what they're doing on the weekends. And it doesn't really matter, does it? And I microdose pretty much daily with Amanita, this Amanita, and I'm not a wuss. I've had access to every medicine, I think, almost imaginable, because we were in that business and people sent us things for decades. And I've done a lot of exploring in that realm. But with Amanita, I believe she is less is more. She equates to less is more. And what she's doing for me right now with these plants that I talk about, I've been disseminating for decades. I'm transitioning. I can't quite do that anymore. It's a lot of work. I don't live at my garden any longer, and I don't need to. I fulfilled that need. We started doing this in like the late 80s, so it's been a long time, and the plants are now out there. I don't need, my role there. My role is more bring a plant altar here, or to your event or your party or whatever. I don't, so Amanita muscaria is helping me clarify my life at this time. I'm an elder, this is the last part of my life, and she's helping me greatly. So I'm in total awe of her medicine. Okay. Anybody want to say anything right now?
I want to thank you so much for holding space for plants that just find you. I know what that feels like to be a land steward, and transition happens to us almost daily.
Yeah.
But when that one big cycle comes, that's very difficult. Because the land is often the thing we speak to the most often.
Amen. And I know you know.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking questions?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for this discussion. I want to thank you so much for this. I think it's not on.
It'll
But
come
I
up.
can,
Keep going.
for this discussion, I've been curious about Amanita muscaria because, so I'm Odawa Anishinaabe, we're a tribe in Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And in my tribe, there's documented use of our work, some medicine women work with Amanita muscaria. And I don't really know so much about it. And you had mentioned the Sami people, so thank you for mentioning them. And you mentioned some Native American tribes on Turtle Island. So I was curious if you could speak a little bit more to that, and if you ran across Kiwatanokwe, who is the Anishinaabe medicine woman.
I know who you, I know who you're speaking of, and Gordon Wasson went to meet her, right? He's definitely a key player and goes back with Maria Sabina way back in the 50s, and then in 1968 his theory of Amanita muscaria being the foundation of Soma. And then I was particularly interested, I don't know how to say her name. Would you say?
Kiwatanokwe. Kiwatano means north, and Kwe is woman, so north woman, Kiwatanokwe.
Well, I read his story about her, and it's interesting because some people don't believe it, that she really did use the Amanita. I don't know, I wasn't there. But I was particularly interested because I came from that part. I grew up in around the Great Lakes in Michigan, and it was like, whoa. And I've also learned that many of the healers, the shamans, were women working with this medicine, and it totally makes sense. She's a queen. So what was your question?
Just curious about other Native tribes, because I've also been reached out to from the Government Accountability Office, who's preparing a report for Congress on psilocybin use within the boundaries of the United States, and they were asking, they want to see quote unquote documented use by Native people of work with different mushrooms. But I was curious just if since it seems like you've read a lot of stuff.
And we'll do a little bit here, but then he goes into it real extensively. Yes.
Gordon, there is a Richard Evans Schultes and Gordon Wasson piece from the.
Perfect. We're going to turn right now. That's great.
There's a
Okay.
piece from the Harvard Botanical Museum that was written up about this for in the way of documentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Of this woman.
About Kuwait, no Kuwait.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
There is a monograph from the Harvard Botanical Museum about Kuwait Nokwe and about her use of mushrooms, and it is available.
Thank you.
And there is some people don't believe it. But,
Good luck.
yeah, right, thank you.
I think that's a great protection to have.
What?
To
Yeah,
believe.
to not be believed.
To not believe, because it's not for you. You know, we live in a time where everything is accessible.
Yes,
And that's what my sister was just talking about. Just because it's there, that doesn't mean you have to do it because someone else had a great experience. There's so many other things that you have access to that doesn't even take a road trip or hiking a mountain.
right,
It's in your backyard, and if I
Right.
can recall the last Women Visionary Congress that we have in Petaluma, a sister asked, why aren't you using your own
mm-hmm,
medicine people
Yeah,
that are in
yeah.
your own backyards?
Yeah.
We need to be used.
mm-hmm,
We're telling people we're here, right? But our medicine isn't quick enough, right? And then if you don't look as traditional and ancient, then you're not entertaining enough. So I think it's a protection to not believe. I
Mhm,
started feeling
mhm,
safer
mm-hmm,
instead of trying to get people to see me. I'm glad you can't.
mm-hmm,
I'm
mm-hmm,
invisible to be protected for those who can see me.
mm-hmm. Okay, and to speak to that, in Siberia, after they murdered the practitioners, the ones that survived went underground, of course, and in 1995, there's a family that went to Siberia to try to get more information, and it was Emanuel Salzman, Salzman, and his wife Joanne, and his son Jason, and a couple of other people that I'm not familiar with. And it turns out Emanuel and Joanne are the founders of the Telluride Mushroom Festival, right? So that might be where you would hear their name. And they went there and did get some information, but people were pretty tight-lipped because, for obvious reasons, here come Westerners trying to find out more information. They may have been some of their, the ancestors of some of the survivors, and then there is it's a pretty good video that was done of a woman healer named Tatiana, and does anybody know that one? You might, Hank. And there's a reference to it on my resource list over there, and people came to visit with her. She came out and greeted them and talked about the Amanita, but to the very end, she said she never took it. But she came out in a bright red dress with white spots, right? And she was very, very animated, like hyper animated. And I know that when I eat a thumbnail-sized piece of the dry Amanita, I become pretty stimulated, and it's really good. And I'm a pretty calm person, so I like the stimulation, and I will eat a little piece of that in the mid-morning, and then, am I going all over the place here?
No, go ahead.
Is it okay? Okay. And then in the evening, I will take some of the tea to help me wind down and go to sleep. And I know in Siberia, the elders ate the mushroom every day, that as the stories go. And I could see that. For endurance, good Lord, of course. And maybe to stave off hunger. but certainly for the endurance and the stimulation. And it was dried. And it sounds like most, well, at least in Siberia, it's documented that they dried it before they used it. And here's a piece about the, we haven't talked about the constituents yet. So we have the ibotenic or ibotenic acid, and we have the muscimol. Those are predominant. And then there is muscarine, which is, there's a little bit of muscarine, and muscazone, which I don't really know anything about. So I told you I'm a novice here. And so it depends on how you're using it, what constituents you're going to get the most of course. And so in the raw state, it's mostly ibotenic acid. And my friend Michael, who's over there, he had an experience a long time ago that I'd love him to share, because he ate raw amanita, and it's a good example of where you might go with it. So.
Sure, it's 1970, I'm 18 years old, in Berkeley, and have been exposed to what was called organic mescaline, that I now understand is probably ibogaine.
And you know what, that's not on, I don't think. Okay, you just gotta get closer to it.
Oh, get a little closer.
You can hear me. So, so I was really into taking a lot of LSD, but wanting to have organic psychedelics, and didn't want to keep going down to Telegraph Avenue to score. And the Wasson book had just come out, and the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross also. And so I was hearing about, psychedelics are really, these plants are really part of religion, and we want to experience it. So we didn't have anything else. So my friend Jeff and I decided to take a cap of this stuff that had always been growing in our neighborhood and was psychedelic looking. It's like, this is the stuff. So we took a big cap and cut it in half, and we were sitting at a little table. It was about dusk, and we just sort of ate it. It was not really particularly hard to eat or anything. And we just suddenly went into kind of like a little trance, like you smoke pot, just kind of spaced out. And the next thing we know, like the sun is on the other side, and the whole night had gone by. And we were just like frozen there in our bodies with thought. But what's important to me is that over the years, I have felt like I was visited during that experience, possibly by, I call them intraterrestrials, that sort of became guardian angels, and I've had a really blessed life and been in service of medicine ever since. And I feel like I got some kind of a directive during that night. So 18 years old, still at it. But ibotenic.
Thank you. Yeah. And that piece about not, having that space and time that you don't remember what happened necessarily, that's a classic, it's referred to as amnesia. And then you wake up, sometimes people wake up days later, and that's would be the danger of eating a large amount of raw material, right? So I certainly don't suggest that, and I'm not going there. I have a swimming pool right outside my door, kind of. I don't want to end up in the swimming pool. And in Baba Masha, in some of her case histories in the back, people talk about that. They've eaten, they're not only talking about microdosing, they talk about having deeper experiences with eating the fresh mushroom and injuring themselves really seriously, like breaking their legs or walking into a wall. It's serious stuff. So then I start with ibotenic or ibotenic acid, and then we decarboxylate it in different stages to convert it to muscimol. And if you dehydrate it or dry it over your wood stove or whatever, and I suggest if you're going to get into this that you use a good dehydrator at a certain temperature and do it that way so you have a uniform drying and your product is uniform. When you do that, when you decarboxylate in that way, you're doing about a 30% conversion to the other muscimol. Okay, so the ibotenic acid is working in the brain as a stimulation, as a stimulant, and when you convert it to muscimol, you're going into the calm state. So by drying it, you're doing 30%. Then if you make the tea with it, you're converting to another 30%. And they considered that your sweet spot and a good place to start, as a beginner, to work in this sweet spot for a while. And that's where I've been for about a year. And now I'm working into titrating up from there. To where I started, I made tea and I would take a half a teaspoon. That was my dose before bed. And now I'm up to about 3 teaspoons, which would be a tablespoon. That's still considered a microdose. A macrodose is considered 2 tablespoons of the tea. So I'm working up to that place. And you want me to tell you how to make the tea while we're right here? Yeah. Okay. It's real easy. And maybe before I leave, I will write it up on a piece of paper and put it over there and you can take a screenshot and then you'll have it. It's super easy. Get 8 ounces, 1 cup of good water. So you don't want tap water that's chlorinated, any good water. And you take 15 grams of dried amanita. Those jars are 30 grams. So about half of that, and you crush it up in the water, and you cook it, and it's heat stable, so you can, and we're converting it as it's heating. We're pulling it more to the muscimol side, the more calm side, and you heat it for about 30 minutes, and you add a little bit of water. When Amanita Dreamer does that on one of her YouTube videos, it's very cute, and she's just, talking and walking around while it's cooking on the stove, and she says, keep adding a little bit of water. She's got the top off, which I wouldn't normally do, take the top off, but, and then what you want to, and so I was thinking, I'll add lemon, because that will draw out more of the actives. She refers to them as actives. Because I do that with San Pedro and other medicine when I'm cooking it. But I learned before I did that if I add the lemon, then it goes more conversion. So that's a whole nother animal. You can do that. She refers to it in another one of her videos. So I didn't do the lemon. And you want to end up with 8 ounces. And then you strain it off, and I'm looking for something I had over here. There it is. And you've got this, it's actually delicious tea, just tastes like mushroom tea. And so 1 cup of water, 15 grams of dried material, cook it for about 30 minutes, strain it off, don't add anything else to it, strain it off. And if you don't have 8 ounces, again, add a little bit more water. And then, because I've been a medicine maker for decades, I have all kinds of bottles and things. These are 2-ounce cobalt glass jars. And so I put 2 ounces in 4 of these. I freeze 3 of them. So if you're going to do that, you don't tighten the cap really tight. You want to leave it a little bit, because it's going to expand. You don't want it to explode. And I put them in individual plastic bags just in case. And then I keep the other one in my fridge for a week of use. And so originally 15 grams, and that 1 cup would last me a whole month, because one of these lasted a whole week of half a teaspoon per evening. Now I'm up to a little bit more, so 15 grams probably goes like 6 weeks for me. But that's a long time for a little bit of mushroom. I harvested from November to January, I think. I had 7 gallons of dry mushroom caps, and I still have a lot. Some of them are here. What I'm going to do before I start harvesting again, as soon as the rains start, so I'm going to make a lot of tincture. I had read at one point that tincture wasn't that good, makes it kind of sick, but now I'm reading it's really a good way to go. You can travel with it, because I traveled this summer. I thought, anyway, I didn't take it with me, and I wished I had. So the tincture, I'm going to make it with 190 proof organic grape spirits. I'm going to make a lot, so if anybody is interested, you can check in with me. I like your thank you, rah rah. Please.
Hello.
Hello.
So I know you said depending how you utilize it versus like eating it raw or making it tea, you get different benefits from it. Can you maybe like explain or compare the type of high you're getting from it when you take the tea versus like eating it raw? I know what we just heard, but is it closer to something like smoking a joint, or is it taking like psilocybin or something beyond that?
It's very calming. It's very comforting. It's like going back home. It's like real heart-centered, and the beauty to me of taking the tea is that I feel like she's with me all the time. And so many times I'll get a message, and I go, oh, of course, it came from her. She's my biggest ally right now. So I think when you take the tea, when you microdose, keep the tea in your system all the time, you get the benefit of the well-being that Baba Masha, that I just read her description of being, it's kind of like being at one with the universe, but it's also, again, I'm learning. I'm learning. It just feels really good to me. And otherwise, I don't know that I would do it. And it feels a bit too much. And here's a whole other piece, and I'll address in a minute. And then I felt a little nauseous. I went, whoa, okay, that was a little much. So these mushrooms are so variable. They vary. You might have 4 of them in a row, and each one of them is going to be chemically higher or lower in their the percentage of actives. And even if there are 4 of them growing in November, you go back in December, it's the ones that have emerged are going to be different. Then there's the aspect of, well, we're going to show this in just a minute. We're going to show a piece of a time lapse of the mushrooms emerging, so I can speak to that. But welcome. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, please.
Do you harvest them, or do you cultivate them? Are they something that we can raise?
You can, I harvest them. I mean, we all live in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
They grow all the way up and down the coast, up into Canada. I mean, they're on basically every continent. They're all over, but we have a lot of them here. I don't think you can grow them artificially. it's a beautiful thing. They come up once a year and you go for it. And I've also read, and I think it's probably true, that the first flush is the most potent. And also we know that the darkest red, if anybody wants to grab that biggest jar and pass it around, the darkest red has most of the actives, which is why Native Americans in North America were smoking the skin. It's got the most medicine. When they, well, you can see it as you're drying. They, it almost seems like the medicine flows into the center of the cap, and so what I do when I harvest, I make sure that when I'm drying them, that when I'm packing them in jars, and I usually use, these are jars in case somebody wants to start acquainting themselves, but I usually use really big jars, and I make sure that I put different mushrooms. I don't take just one mushroom, two mushroom, and pack it in there. I take pieces from many different mushrooms because they're so variable. And please.
Do you dry them whole, or do you cut them and dry them like that?
It depends how big they are. I've got a photo, if we could show the one with my hand. This one. Okay, there's my arm. She's pretty big. So if I dried it whole, you know, and I'm going to speak to the other part. I only dry the caps at this time. What I found is that, through research of course, is that the stems called stipes do not have as much of the actives, quite a bit less. So we're getting more of the medicine in the cap, and I make sure I'm conscientious forager. I've been foraging for decades, all kinds of plants, and when I go into a mushroom area, I make sure it looks beautiful when I leave. And I was horrified the first time I went, because when it's mushroom season up north, like around Salt Point, you'll see cars lined up on both sides of the roads, go in there, and they've dug up. Oh, this is terrible. It's so disrespectful. It's heart-wrenching. So when I do it, I bury the stems. I sing to my plants. I leave tokens, my tobacco usually, sage, and I'm totally respectful. And maybe I could be more so. But I do it as well as I know right now. Like I said, I'm the first year apprentice going into my second year. And Amanita Dreamer, she's in it like 6 years now. So we should talk a little bit about ID. And then,
Could I ask you another question? So I'm a clinician and I have people that have anxiety and live out of state. How can this medicine be available for people like in New York?
Send it. I mean, you could send well, they sell it all over the internet too. I wouldn't trust anybody except Amanita Dreamer has a couple people that she sells their Siberian and North American Amanita muscaria dried. She sells it. She has a little shop. She makes products, sells them out, shuts the shop down, makes more because people want. She knows what she's doing. Like I said, she's the real deal. But you can ship them if you go